2024 has not been very kind to me in terms of poker. I have had a terrible month of January and February hasn't been much better so far. Can I turn it around today? Let's have a look.
First hand of the day is already very tricky. The straddle is on, it folds around to us, we make a 20 with king 8 offsuit. The old man in the straddle calls. Now this is not an OMC type, not an old man coffee, a super tight player. He is quite loose and he can also bluff. King 3-3, great flop, we see bet, he calls. Now on this queen I should probably have just continued barreling here, but I thought I will go for big value on the river if he checks, but surprisingly he doesn't check behind, he makes it 17 into 61, so I just call here, and again I should probably have just raised, but I didn't really know what this 17 was about, so I thought maybe he's bluffing and I'll keep his bluffs in. But then the flush comes in and well, straight as well. He definitely also has 3 in his range, so I check here thinking that if he makes it small I might call, but he makes it fairly big, 55 into 95, and we filtered on the flop. Then he bet small on the turn and he bet fairly big, I mean not huge, but still over half pot on the river. So I thought I'd be disciplined here and fold, and in hindsight obviously not only because I know his hand, I should not have folded. He showed an absolute bluff here with 7-5 of hearts. He just completely owned me and I had a terrible start into the session. It can only get better, right? And it gets better. We get dealt aces and an aggressive low jack raises. We make it 30. The big blind cold calls, obviously something you should never do, and the low jack joins the party as well. The flop is delightful. We have top set on a fairly dryish board, so I thought it's best to just check behind here and let the low jack take the lead on the turn here, and he obliges when the jack of clubs comes and he makes it 85 into 91, so that's pretty big, but at this point I thought I can get value out of him here. Maybe I can even cooler him if he has jacks or queen jack or something like that. So I raise it up to 230 and he makes the call. On this brick river he checks again. We have 340 behind. Easy shove here and a snap fold, so maybe, probably he was on a draw, maybe he had a queen or a jack, although I'm not sure why he would have bet pot with a queen or a jack here, so probably just some sort of a draw, and we have to move on. And as if the first mistake wasn't enough, you'll see me make a real blunder in this one. Low jack raises, cutoff calls, button calls, and we have pocket tens in the small blind. We make it 65. This is not the blunder yet, although it's probably better to just call here, but I thought I could take it down or just go heads up and have a decent hand. We do go heads up. The low jack is our only customer, and on this flop of jack 9-5 with 2 hearts, I knew that I should either check or bet big here, and I don't know what possessed me here to put pocket tens without a heart in my bet big range. This is a polarization mistake, something I blame other players and I accuse them of doing, and I just do it here myself. I bet half pot here with a hand that's in the middle of my range, which is absolutely silly. I actually looked it up. If I had had the 10 of hearts, then I can go with a big bet, but this is a mandatory check. Instead I bet big. Low jack calls. Now the ace of diamond comes, and yes, I could turn my tens into a bluff now, but I decide to basically give up and I check. He bets 100 and I have an easy fold. I liked how I played this hand a lot better. I open ace jack suited under the gun and get called by a big whale, very friendly guy in the big blind. 7-6-4, he checks. I think that if he missed here, he'll just fold out anything, so that's why I just go with a small c-bet, although this board doesn't really favor me, but against a player of this caliber it doesn't really matter. He called. Now we hit our ace on the turn. He checks. We can size up a little bit, go half pot. He snaps again here. And on this river, when he checks, I have to go for value here. no question. I go half pot once again, and he snaps me off with 7-3 offsuit. Nice little pot here against the big blind. Here a new player set to my left, a tag, he opens to 12, the button calls, the whale in the small blind calls, and because of that I have an easy call here with 8-7 of diamonds. This is not the hand I would like to have to squeeze. We flop, not too bad, but not great either. We have bottom pair, gut shot, so just check to the aggressor. He checks as well, and button checks. And now the turn is amazing. We now have trips here. Time to go for value. The tag calls, the button folds, the whale calls, and now this is the dreaded river here. Double paired board. I now have the worst full house, and yet I decided to go for value. And let's just talk about this for a moment. The reason why I did this was because I thought under the gun player, yes, he might obviously have a jack, but he could also have a 10. He could have an overpair that he didn't want to c-bet on the flop against 3 players, so I might still get value out of him, but actually I thought that I have a good chance of getting him to fold. So now you're saying, do I want to fold if I have a full house? Well, I want to fold from the tag under the gun, and I know that the whale in the small blind, he will call me here with pocket 8s, he will call me here with an ace probably, and he will definitely call me with a 10. So that was my intention. I thought, yes, it was a bit thin, but I think it is a good bet, and I still think that although I got called by the tag, which I didn't want, and the whale folded, and the tag, unfortunately, he had the dreaded jack. Notice that he did not raise here. I think it's fair play to him, because if he raises, then the small blind will never call, and I would probably not call with a 7 if he raises here, so I think it's a fine play on his side, and I'm still happy that I went for value here, even though it didn't work out. Here's another hand that I misplayed a little, and I think this wouldn't have happened if my confidence had been higher, but I've just been getting battered recently, so I don't know what happened, but anyway, let's have a look at it. I open ace-queen off under the gun. We have a recreational player in the cutoff who calls me, go heads up to the flop, ace 8-4. I think it's fine to either bet or check here. I went for the check because the recreational player was a bit on the aggressive side, and he obliges with a bet here, and this is the point where I should have just check raised here, but I don't know why. As I said, I probably lack confidence, and I just called here, which is really silly because I know he can do this with a weaker ace, and I would get so much more value here if I check raise, but unfortunately I missed that opportunity. Here now the 9 comes, and he now sizes up, and at this point I don't really want to check raise once he sizes up on this turn. Yes, I don't think he would necessarily bluff the river, but on the other hand, if he misses his flush draw and he does this with a flush draw, then I have a good chance of getting another bet out of him. So I just call again here, and on this river, yes, 6-7 gets there, and maybe some sort of a 2 pair, but not a lot. So I check here, and he goes 55, which is half pot. Now at this point I don't want to check raise because he triple barreled me here, so I just call here, and his hand was the 8-5 of hearts, which is like really poorly played. Yes, he got there in the end, and he got a bet out of me when he was finally ahead, but this is a classic polarization mistake here. Yes, he did have the flush draw, and so he just thought, okay, with a flush draw I just keep barreling, but he also has second pair here, and he won't get my ace to fold on the flop or on the turn, so why bet here with a hand that is just very mediocre? So he just bet here with the worst hand on the flop and on the turn, and then he somehow got there on the river. Yes, great, but still very frustrating to see, and I should have just check raised, although in hindsight I would probably have lost a bigger pot because he would not have gone anywhere with his flush draw and his second pair. So I saved myself money by not check raising, but I still think the best play would have been to check raise on the flop. Are you ready for the hand of the day? So there is a limp, we isolate ace queen off here, standard so far, and now we have a very aggressive reg in the small blind making it 75, everyone else folds, and we have our first decision of the hand here. In GTO land this is normally a fold, small frequency 4-bet, but I just went ahead and called here because I know that the small blind's 3-betting range is very, very wide in this spot, and I think ace queen off is actually a winning play here by just flatting. Pretty good flop, 2 heart, ace jack 7, he bet 65, easy call for us here, nothing else to do, so this street is quite easy, which can't be said about the next one, because he does this. 286 pounds in the pot, he overbet to 470. This is not a standard play, although I mean there are 2 flush draws here, so you could say you just jam here with a hand like ace king or ace jack. However, you don't really see this, but I know that this player applies a lot of pressure. I've seen him overbet many times, he loves it. Usually he doesn't have to show down, so I don't know if he does it a lot for bluffs or for value, but I had this tricky decision here, and I actually put this hand up on my Instagram account, and over 100 players voted, and I asked whether calling here would be a punt or not a punt, and it was very close here. Just over half the people said it was no punt, just under a half of the people said it was a punt. I still don't really know, maybe you can let me know in the comments what you think, but I just thought this player type would just not necessarily play ace king like this, although he might, or ace jack or pocket jacks or something like that, and I thought this might be a draw, so I called here. Actually I jammed because I would only have had 65 pounds behind, so I just went all in. He called for the remaining 65 pounds. The river bricked and he shows king 10 of hearts for a monster draw, so he had a flush draw and a double gutter, and we hold and we win this nice big pot. So I moved to a new table, and there was this really big whale in the low jack. He limps here, we isolate with pocket 8s, small blind calls, and the whale calls as well. 6-6-5, the whale donks out third pot. I was considering raising here because I just don't buy that he has a 6, probably has a 5 or just air or some draw maybe, although we block the draws with our 8 here. But anyway, I just called here, small blind called behind. Now with the jack coming here, not great for our hand, but there shouldn't be a jack that calls or bets here either way, but if anything that it helps the low jack's range. He now checks, I have an easy check behind, and when this deuce brick comes on the river, I say brick, yeah, I mean okay, 3-4 gets there, but I doubt that either of them has it the way they've played it, especially because they now both check here. If the whale had bet out now, I would have put 3-4 in his range, but because he checks, and I don't think he would check twice with a big hand, that's not what I've seen from him so far, so I have a mandatory value bet here, and this does look scary, but as I said, no one should really have a jack. I doubt that anyone has a 6, no one has 3-4, so what can they have then? Nothing that beats me, so I have to go for value here. I go just under half pot because I want to get called by a 5 or pocket 4s, pocket 3s, or possibly even ace high or something like that, so I only went just under half pot. Small blind folds and the low jack calls, and he has 5 deuce off, so he has, well, 3 pair, but my 2 pair are better than his 3 pairs, so we take this one down, and it's a nice one. Same villain again, this time he raises under the gun. We have ace-jack off in the low jack, and this is not very standard, but his raise under the gun is not a standard under the gun raise. He just raised with all sorts of hands here, and I wanted to isolate him. The rest of the table was very loose passive, so I thought that I could get away with this raise here, and indeed it happens, and the whale calls me. I never expected him to fold anything here, so I'm happy with that. Not the best flop in the world, and he now goes for almost half pot, and at this point I thought, well, he either has total air or he has some sort of a pocket pair, maybe 6s, 7s, 8s, something like that. But even then, if I imagine that he slows down on the turn with a hand like that, then I do just about get the direct odds to call here. And if we improve, we can obviously win a bigger pot, or the other option is that he just gives up and we can try to bluff him on a later street. So I called here. In hindsight, maybe I should have raised, because we also have the 5 here for the straight and we have 2 overcards. I think we should just have raised, but I thought because it was a 3-bet pot I might have had a bit of respect here, but yeah, I think I should have gone bigger. Now he checks on this 9 turn here, and I think this is my green light to barrel, because I might still be good here if he just did it with total air, like 7-6 for example, or king 10 or something like this, but I think it's best to just try to barrel him off a hand like pocket 6s or pocket 7s maybe, because I've seen him fold to big bets before. But here he snap calls me. He didn't even take half a second to flick his chips in there, and now this happens on the river. We now have top pair, top kicker, and he now goes for 120. So this line absolutely made no sense to me. He raise called pre-flop, then he donked on the flop, then he check snap called the turn, and now he bets out on the river. So to me this looked like, if he does it for value, maybe pocket 9s play it like this, but I just didn't really believe him. This line didn't make a lot of sense, and I had to tank for quite a while here because I didn't want to make a light, or make this call lightly, not a lightly call, but make it lightly. But in the end I just called, and he had 9-8 of diamonds. Now how weirdly did he play this hand? He basically bet every time he was behind and he checked every time he was ahead. So yeah, I got very lucky here in the end, but also he got lucky on the turn, I got lucky on the river, and I scooped this nice big pot against him once again. Last hand of the day, we have pocket 10s, a loose player in the cutoff calls. We go heads up to the flop, ace 10 8, amazing flop for us. We have middle set. I go 10 here into 34 because the cutoff is very short stack, only 135 behind, so no need to go any bigger. He calls. This 7 is not the best card in the deck. Jack 9 gets there, but we still have a very easy value bet. I size up to 40 now, and he jams. Easy call for me. Yes, he could have me beat here, but even then I still have a lot of outs, and if not, then I'm crushing him. I just call here as well, and he has 9-7 of diamonds for an open-ender. He gets there on the river. Unfortunately, I was 82% favorite to win this hand, and I lost it. Still a nice session with a bit of profit here in the end.
At least this session hasn't been as bad as the ones before that, so the only way is up.